Well, good morning, friends. Today we're going to grow some spinach together. We'll be right back after the break. Well, welcome back. Today we're going to grow some spinach and we're going to start it from seed. This is a pretty favorite fall vegetable in a lot of folks' gardens, and I really like spinach, and so does Nancy. So we're going to grow some. But I got these seeds from johnnyseed.com online. So if you want to get some of these seeds, check it out. This variety is called Tasman. It's a hybrid savoid spinach. Okay, so I'm going to get these trays started, and if this is the first time you've ever grown spinach or in any way in your garden, I wanted to point out that it is pretty difficult to get spinach to germinate correctly. If your soil temperature is 80 degrees or more, it's going to bolt, or it won't even germinate. It's very difficult to get it to germinate and survive until you can plant it. In fact, if this is your first time growing spinach in your garden, your first garden, I would recommend going to your local nursery and just buying some starter plants and start out with that and try that the first year until you get your feet wet in your garden, because this is one of the more difficult seeds to get to take, So here's the way that I do it out here. I'll start out with a single tray, and I'll put out the seeds and let them try to germinate. And I'll watch this temperature. I want to make sure my temperatures are declining as fall's coming on as I'm putting these out. And I'll put out one tray, and in 10 days I put out another tray, and in 10 days I put out another tray. I'll keep doing that until I get a good tray, because even if the first tray germinates, and if it's still a little bit too hot for it, it'll bolt. Even a little tiny starter plant, it'll bolt. So there's a lot of getting it perfectly timed with the temperature and the soil temperature and the conditions and everything for it to hit just right. So it takes multiple tries for me. I mean, y'all might be a lot better at it than I am, but that's how I do it. I space them out about 10 days apart, and I keep putting them out in intervals like that until I can get me a good germination rate and a good couple of trays of them that I can use to transplant. I don't like growing these out in the earth bed. I like to use these after they are successful seedlings. I like to take those seedlings and transplant them into 3-gallon containers, and I put them out on my grow tables in the container garden. They're so much easier to grow out in a container. You don't have to get down on your hands and knees to tend to them and take care of them. They're up away from a lot of the insect activity that's down at the ground level. So having them up on the raised grow tables has been a tremendous success for me in the past. And that's the way I'm going to do on this video. I'm going to use them in containers, and I'm going to keep them up on the grow tables until we harvest them. And even harvesting them is a lot easier, because you can take off the bottom row and just keep harvesting from the bottom up, and you get multiple harvests out of it. And it's really good when it first come off the plant like that. So anyway, let me get these seeds in this first tray, and we'll get it back over into the seed starting racks, and we'll be off and running. Okay, here's how I start all of my seeds. I use a 10-20 starting tray, and I like to use the ones with the drain holes because I start my seeds outdoors, so I don't have a problem with the drainage of the water seeping through and getting anything wet on the inside of my house or the inside of an indoor container, seed starting container, because I do all my seed starting outside. So I like to have the drain holes in mind, because I want to keep my cuts, I want the water to fall completely through my cups and let me add water as needed, instead of them standing in water for too long of a period of time, which rots my seeds. Okay, so that's why I use the 10-20 drain tray. Now I use my cups, my seed starting cups. I like to use the ones that have you know, at least a 2 to 3 inch deep cell, because I want to get a good root system through here before I try to pull that little seedling out of there. Next thing I do is I add my seed starting mix, and I make my own seed starting mix. So if you want to learn how to make this stuff at home, you can. We have a video on our channel that explains how to do that and demonstrates it pretty clear. Or you can, if you only have 1 or 2 trays to do, then just simply go buy some seed starting mix at your local nursery. For me, I have many seeds trays that I need to start, so it's more economical for me to make my own seed starting mix. Okay, so next thing I do is I use the mix. And I fill up my tray, my seed starting cells. Once I have it good and leveled off like this, then I come back through here and I mash in all of these seed cells. Mash them in good and tight. Use your fingers, push them down in there, because this thing is just full of air. And if you have air inside these cells when you're trying to start your seeds, they're not going to germinate. You know, you're just wasting your money and your time, and very disappointing. So you want to keep these things good and tight when you get ready to start. So push them down good. And once I have them down, packed in there pretty tight, the next thing I do is I pre-moisten. Some people pre-moisten their soil before they put it in, but I've always found it easier to do it like this. You can do it either way you want, it's up to you. Now that I got it tight, I pre-moisten each cell by flooding it a little bit. Okay. Let that soak down just for a few seconds. You see, it just gobbles up that moisture, it's so dry. And once I got it where I don't see the water standing anymore, then I tamp down the tray. Now it's really good and tight, and it's moist. I'm going to use some spinach seeds here for this demonstration, simply because the seeds are nice and big and you can see them on the camera. Here's the seeds. Now what I like to do is I like to put 2 to 3 seeds in each cell. I'll let those seeds germinate, and as the seedlings get up, mature, a little bit bigger, where they're an inch or so tall, I'll come in with a pair of scissors and snip off, you know, the weakest looking seedlings and keep the best one. So I thin it down to where I have 1 seedling for each tray. So let's start out by putting a couple seeds in each one of these cells. And I try to make sure that I get them kind of close to the middle of the cell, because if you don't, they run out to the end, you know, to the edge of the cup, and I just don't like them to grow down the edge of the cup. Okay. After I get the seeds in the cups, and I come back and I add in some more soil and level that back off again to where you got right at about 1/4 of an inch of soil on top of those seeds. And right now this looks like I got more than 1/4 inch, but keep in mind it's full of air. So once I get it in there, again I mash it down a little bit. I hit it with a little bit of water. You'll see it sink down some more, so I'm getting to that 1/4 inch, that magic 1/4 inch mark I'm looking for of soil over the top of the seed. You don't have to add very much water that time. And again, I tamp it down. Okay, there's our first tray of spinach seeds. Got them planted, ready to go. Let's put them over here in the seed starting rack and let's get started. Okay, there's our first tray of spinach in the rack, ready to grow. So I'm gonna keep adding these in intervals of 10 days, remember? So we'll stay up with y'all on the progression of this video. I'm probably get 3 or 4 trays in here till I get it going right, but we'll keep trying. I got plenty of seed to give it, keep giving them second trays, third trays, fourth trays, however many it takes. So we'll keep on this progression video all the way to harvest. So we'll see you back in about 10 days. Well, our spinach has been growing for about 2 weeks now. And as you can see, it's very slow to germinate, very slow to grow. I've got, you know, probably maybe a 40% germination rate there. Not all that great, but I did back it up with 2 more trays, you know, 2 more trays over here to give me a backup just in case. Like I say, when you're gonna plant spinach, keep them planted in intervals. So we'll see how we go, and I'll be back in a couple weeks. Well, our spinach has been in the seed starting rack for 2 weeks, and like I say, it's tough to get spinach going. This is our first seed tray. We'll take a look at it. You can see that the seeds germinated and they started popping up, but they also started to die off, like this one. It just died off. See, I think what the problem is we have a little bit too much heat, so they weren't really doing very well in this hot Florida summer down here. We're trying to get to the cool weather, and we didn't quite make it. It's just now starting to cool off here, so what I've done is I've put 2 more trays out just last week, and we're hoping that they'll do a little bit better on the germination rate and maybe the survival rate. So let's hope for the best. We'll see you back in about a week. Well, it's been a difficult little journey with these spinach, trying to get these seeds to germinate and do something. Like I said earlier, you know, you need to space these out a couple weeks apart as you plant. And you can see here's the first 2 trays. You know, there was a complete failure on germination on these 2. Then I came back in a couple of weeks and I put in another tray. And as you can see here, this one's really starting to get somewhere. It's getting some traction. Then I put in another tray another week later, and it's doing really good, a lot more germination. And then I just put in another one last week, and it looks like it's doing pretty good. So it's really persistence with these things, because you can be planting them, and these spinach seeds, they want that temperature exactly right for them to work. And you can have the temperature exactly right and put them in, and next thing you know, 3 days later, the weather changes just enough to mess them up. So like I said earlier, keep putting them in week 1 to 2 week intervals until you hit it just right. And that's what we did here. It's kind of a non-scientific way to do it, but at least it works for me. But if this is your first time growing spinach, I recommend just going to the nursery and buying some starter plants until you get your feet wet with it, because these are very discouraging to try to work with, and if it's your first time, you know, doing seed starts. But anyway, we got them going. These are, this tray here is about ready to start hardening off. These are weeks away. So we'll be back in the days ahead when I get some of these hardened off and a little bit more mature, and we'll get them into 3-gallon containers, and we'll watch them all the way up to harvest. So we'll be back soon. Well, our spinach are really starting to get some traction. Here's 2 trays that look like they're pretty much ready to go. And this tray here, he's still lagging behind a little bit. We'll give him a little bit more time out here on the hardening table. But these have been hardening off for the last week, and as you can see, these are, you know, becoming some beautiful spinach, and they're ready to get on into the 3-gallon container. So that's what I want to do today, is get these planted into 3-gallon containers. And in the days ahead, when this other tray catches up with the other guys, then I'll just add these to it. But this will give us plenty to get started. So I'm going to start off today with about 18 3-gallon containers. So let's get started.
First thing I like to do is I fill up my containers about approximately 3 inches from the top of the rim of the container. And at this point, I'm going to add some blood meal because I want lots of foliage. So here's an organic fertilizer that I use, blood meal, and I'm going to put about a handful, which is about two to 3 tablespoons. I'm going to put a little handful of that blood meal right in the top of each one of these buckets. Then I'm going to water these buckets in and flood that bucket and let that water soak all the way down through that container to pre-moisten all that container soil. And the container soil that I'm using is my own blend. I make it myself. If you want to make some of that container soil for yourself, we have a video online. I'll get Nancy to put the link on there on the channel for you at the end of this video. It's how to make your own container soil at home. This is how I do it. So that's how, if you want to make this for yourself, go check out that video. So right now we got the blood meal in with the soil. At this point I want to flood that bucket. I give it a good old squirt. It'll take about 15 minutes or so for these pots to soak on down. So we'll be back in about 15 minutes after these things get through soaking, and we'll take it to the next step. Okay, our pots have finished soaking. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to dig me a hole with my hand. I'm going to take some blood meal, a new blood meal. I'm going to give it another hand scoop. See there? The reason for that is blood meal promotes foliage growth, and you know, with our spinach, that's exactly what we're after. So heavy up on the blood meal to get that boost of nitrogen. At this point, I just take the plant and drop it right in. I collapse the sides around it and pack it fairly tight. Then I take some more container soil and I put it around the sides. Yeah, broke that little leaf. Just take that off. Okay, there we go. That one's ready to go over to the grow table and be lightly watered in one more time. So let's do another one. Okay, I dig me a hole with my fingers. Put in me another little hand scoop of blood meal. Take out my plant, my seedling, carefully. Insert it in the hole and collapse the hole on the sides around it. Okay. Make sure you get it packed pretty good because you want to squeeze out all that air that's in that soil best you can. Get that packed in. And take some more container soil that's dry. Put in here. Okay. And that one's ready. Let me finish getting the rest of these done, and we'll get them over to the grow table and we'll get them out and get them started. Okay, I got my 3-gallon containers with spinach. I had to borrow my potato rack because my other ones are actually full, believe it or not. But that's okay. I don't have any potatoes until spring, and this is a fall vegetable. So by the time I'm through with these, it'll be time to put some taters up here. But the last step in the process here is, remember we watered in these containers before we planted, and then I put some dry container mix on top when I planted it. Now I turn the water down real low, and I just lightly water. See? I just get that little bit on the top wet again. Almost the same way I did when they were just seedlings. Well, they really still are seedlings, but when they were still in the trays, that's about how I watered them in the trays. You don't want to overwater and cause a root rot problem with these things when they're real young like this. I've got all these plants all out in the full sun, and they'll be full sun all day with a little bit of partial shade in the late afternoon. So they get about 9 hours of sun, and then the rest of the day is partial shade. And that's just about the sweet spot for these spinach. Okay, I got these all watered in. Okay, our spinach is off and running. Difficult to get them started from seed, but stick with it. Like I said, increments, intervals of 1 week apart. Keep planting, don't give up on them. And there's our first row. I'm going to continue planting these as they harden off in the next couple, 3 days. And I'll go ahead and use this whole row right here, just make it all spinach. So we'll be back shortly. We'll let these mature, and we'll watch the development of these until we get to harvest them, and then I can't wait to see what Nancy does with them. We'll be back in a couple, 3 weeks. Well, our Tasman spinach is really rocking and rolling now. It's getting cooler, and the weather's, the sun's not quite as intense on them, and they're just thriving out here. So these things are getting ready to the point now that you could come out here and start picking off of this and, putting some in your salads and things like that. But I'm going to let these keep going, let them get a little bit bigger, and because I want to get Nancy to make me some seedlings. I love that stuff when she makes it. But anyway, the row is really looking nice. They're all bushing out, and it'll only be another week or two. We'll get out here and get on some of this. So we'll see you back in a couple of weeks. Well, this spinach is looking absolutely beautiful. I cleared off a couple of the tables here. I got rid of, harvested up a lot of the bok choy, which freed up some space, and I was able to bring all the spinach over there from the temporary home on the tater tables. So I brought them over here where they're supposed to have been all along, but they're much more comfortable position up here on these tables for watering and harvesting. And I'm ready to harvest. So we harvested some yesterday and gave it to Nancy's mama. She was just thrilled to death. And I just wanted to show you today, how beautiful these plants are, and show you how I harvest these. There's 2 ways you can harvest them. One is you can just cut the whole plant off and take the whole thing and be done with it. If you have a whole lot of it like this, you could just, whack it off and harvest it and eat it. If you only have 2 or 3 or 4 little plants, then what you want to do is you want to harvest the leaves around the bottom and work your way up toward the middle and leave that middle part of the plant intact, and it'll grow more and cascade out, and you can get multiple harvests out of it. And you can see right here, these are some plants that I harvested 4 of them yesterday for Nancy's mama, and that's how I did them. I did the outside rings and left the inside intact, so that'll recover and produce more. So anyway, today I just wanted to show you one of the plants and show you how I do that. It's a pretty simple process. This is just absolutely beautiful spinach. I like to go right down in here and get close into the stem, to the stalk, and I cut the leaves Yeah, aren't those beautiful? And I just love the way they sound. Hear that? So fresh. Anyway, I'm gonna get some more of this real quick here. They're right around the bottom. And there we go. I'll leave a couple of big leaves on there so it can catch a lot of sun, and see the little baby ones that are coming out. Now those will be nice and pretty here, in a couple of more weeks. So that's how I do that, and that will provide many more harvests in the days ahead. So that's how I do it if I just want to let them continue to grow. Well, sure, thank you for joining me on this little journey of growing this Tasman spinach together. I hope that you learned a little bit from it and maybe give you enough confidence to try this for the first time if you've never grown it before. It's an excellent fall vegetable, and it's very healthy for you, and really it's relatively easy to grow. And I like doing it in the containers for, a couple of reasons. They're very easy to harvest and maintain. And the second reason is it's up off of the ground and it doesn't get full of dirt or bugs as bad. But I don't get it so full of dirt that I have to, pre-soak it and soak it and soak it, trying to clean it up. It's pretty clean when I harvest this. So that might be the way you want to do it, and that's the way I recommend doing it anyway. Anyway, I hope you liked the video. Hope it brought a smile to your face and some joy to your heart. And we want to thank the Lord for this beautiful spinach. So until me and Nancy see you next time, always remember, by His hands we are fed. Give us, Lord, our daily bread. Amen.
Have a blessed day.